Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to our Friday night reading of Nectar of Devotion here in Bhaktiville. This is Dasi Lane, and with us are Bhakti Mimulus, our tech wizard, Bhakti Grease, our official DJ of Bhaktiville. So stay tuned for that. We're going to put together some tunes and some dancing. Haribo with DJ Grease. And Cute Ears is also here tonight, which is great. So welcome to all of you in Second Life, in Facebook. And let's get going here. So sorry about last week. We were unable to post our reading last week because we had some technical difficulties, but we are moving right along and we're here. So we're on chapter 18 of the Nectar of Devotion. The title of the chapter is Character of One in Ecstatic Love. And you'll find that on page 138 of the book or page 174 of the PDF. All right, here we go. Character of One in Ecstatic Love. Rupa Goswami next describes the characteristics of a person who has actually developed his ecstatic love for Krishna. The characteristics are as follows. 1. He is always anxious to utilize his time in the devotional service of the Lord. He does not like to be idle. He wants service always, 24 hours a day without deviation. 2. He is always reserved and perseverant. 3. He is always detached from all material attraction. 4. He does not long for any material respect in return for his activities. 5. He is always certain that Krishna will bestow his mercy upon him. 6. He is always very eager to serve the Lord faithfully. 7. He is very much attached to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. 8. He is always eager to describe the transcendental qualities of the Lord. And 9. He is very pleased to live in a place where the Lord's pastimes are performed, for example, Mathura, Vrindavan, or Dwarka. Next section is utilization of time. An unalloyed devotee who has developed ecstatic love for Krishna is always engaging his words in reciting prayers to the Lord. Within the mind, he is always thinking of Krishna, and with his body, he is either offering obeisances by bowing down before the deity or is engaging in some other service. During these ecstatic activities, he sometimes sheds tears. In this way, his whole life is engaged in the service of the Lord, with not a moment wasted on any other engagement. Perseverance is the next section. When a person is undisturbed, even in the presence of various causes of disturbance, he is called reserved and perseverant. An example of this perseverance and reservation is found in the behavior of King Parikshit, as described in the first canto, 19th chapter, 13th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The king says there to all the sages present before him at the time of his death, quote, "My dear Brahmanas, you should always accept me as your surrendered servant. I have come to the bank of the Ganges just to devote my heart and soul unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So please bless me, that Mother Ganges may always be pleased with me. Let the curse of the Brahmana's son fall upon me. I do not mind. I only request that at the last moment of my life, all of you will kindly chant the holy name of Vishnu, so that I may realize his transcendental qualities." This example of Maharaj Parikshit's behavior, his remaining patience, I would say, even at the last point of his life, his undisturbed condition of mind is an example of reservation. This is one of the characteristics of a devotee who has developed ecstatic love for Krishna. The next section is detachment. The senses are always desiring sense enjoyment, but when a devotee develops transcendental love for Krishna, his senses are no longer attracted by material desires. This state of mind is called detachment. There is a nice example of this detachment in connection with the character of King Bharata. In the fifth canto, 14th chapter, 43rd verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, quote, Emperor Bharata was so attracted by the beauty of the lotus feet of Krishna that even in his youthful life, he gave up all kinds of attachments to family, children, friends, kingdom, etc., as though they were untouchable stool. End quote. Emperor Bharata is a typical example of detachment. He had everything enjoyable in the material world, but he left it. This means that detachment does not mean artificially keeping oneself aloof and apart from the allurements of attachment. Even in the presence of such allurements, if one can remain unattracted by material attachments, that is called detachment. In the beginning, of course, a neophyte devotee must try to keep himself apart from all kinds of alluring attachments. But the real position of a mature devotee is that even in the presence of all allurements, he is not at all attracted. This is the actual criterion of detachment. The next section is pridelessness. When a devotee, in spite of possessing all the qualities of pure realization, is not proud of his position, that is called pridelessness. In the Padma Purana, it is stated that King Bhagirath was the emperor above all other kings, yet he developed such ecstatic love for Krishna that he became a mendicant and went out begging even to the homes of his political enemies and untouchables. He was so humble that he respectfully bowed down before them. There are many similar instances in the history of India. Even very recently, about 200 years ago or less, one big landlord known as Lala Babu, a Calcutta landholder, became a Vaishnava and lived in Vrindavan. He was also begging from door to door, even at the homes of his political enemies. Begging involves being ready to be insulted by persons at whose home one has come. That is natural. But one has to tolerate such insults for the sake of Krishna. The devotee of Krishna can accept any position in the service of Krishna. The next section is great hope. The strong conviction that one will certainly receive the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called in Sanskrit ashabandha. Ashabandha means to continue to think, quote, because I'm trying my best to follow the routine principles of devotional service, I am sure that I will go back to Godhead, back to home. End quote. What does he call that? Oh, great hope. Definitely great hope. In this connection, one prayer by Rupa Goswami is sufficient to exemplify this hopefulness. He says, quote, I have no love for Krishna, nor for the causes of developing love of Krishna, namely hearing and chanting, and the process of bhakti yoga, by which one is always thinking of Krishna and fixing his lotus feet in the heart, is also lacking in me. As far as philosophical knowledge or pious words are concerned, I don't see any opportunity for me to execute such activities. But above all, I'm not even born of a nice family. Therefore, I must simply pray to you, Gopi Janaballabha, Krishna, maintainer and beloved of the gopis. I simply wish and hope that some way or other I may be able to approach your lotus feet, and this hope is giving me pain because I think myself quite incompetent to approach that transcendental goal of life. End quote. The purport is that under this heading of Asha Bandha, one should continue to hope against hope that some way or other he will be able to approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. The next section is eagerness for achieving the desired success. When one is sufficiently eager to achieve success in devotional service, that is called samutkanta. This means complete eagerness. Actually, this eagerness is the price for achieving success in Krishna consciousness. Everything has some value, and one has to pay the value before obtaining or possessing it. It is stated in the Vedic literature that to purchase the most valuable thing, Krishna consciousness, one has to develop intense eagerness for achieving success. This intense eagerness is very nicely expressed by Bilva Mangala Thakur in his book Krishna Karnamrita. He says, quote, I am eagerly waiting to see that boy of Vrindavan, whose bodily beauty is captivating the whole universe, whose eyes are always bounded by black eyebrows and expanded like lotus petals, who is always eagerly glancing over his devotees and therefore moving slightly here and there. His eyes are always moist, and his lips are colored like copper, and through those lips there comes a sound vibration which drives one madder than a mad elephant. I want so much to see him at Vrindavan. End quote. In the same Karnamrita, there is another statement about the chanting of Radharani. It is said by one of the associates of Radharani, quote, O Lord Govinda, the girl who is the daughter of King Vrishabhanu is now shedding tears, and she is anxiously chanting your holy name, Krishna, Krishna. End quote. This attachment for chanting the glories of the Lord is also stated in the Karnamrita as follows, quote, what shall I do for Krishna, who is pleasing beyond all pleasurable conceptions, and who is naughtier than all restless boys? The idea of Krishna's beautiful activities is attracting my heart, and I don't know what I can do. Next section is attraction for living in a place where Krishna has his pastimes. In the book Padyavali by Rupa Goswami, there is the following statement about Vrindavan, quote, in this place, the son of Maharaj Nanda used to live with his father, who was king of all cowherd men. In this place, Lord Krishna broke the cart in which the Shakatashura demon was concealed. And at this place, Damodar, who can cut the knot of our material existence, was tied up by his mother Yashoda. A pure devotee of Lord Krishna resides in the district of Mathura, or Vrindavan, and visits all the places where Krishna's pastimes were performed. At these sacred places, Krishna displayed his childhood activities with the cowherd boys and Mother Yashoda. The system of circumambulating all these places is still current among devotees of Lord Krishna. Those coming to Mathura and Vrindavan always feel transcendental pleasure. Actually, if someone goes to Vrindavan, he will immediately feel separation from Krishna, who performed such nice activities when he was present there. Such attraction for remembering Krishna's activities is known as attachment for Krishna. There are impersonalist philosophers and mystics, however, who buy a show of devotional service and want ultimately to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord. They sometimes try to imitate a pure devotee's sentiment for visiting the holy places where Krishna had his pastimes, but they simply have a view for salvation, and so their activities cannot be considered attachment. It is said by Rupa Goswami that the attachment exhibited by pure devotees for Krishna cannot possibly be perfected in the heart of fruitive workers, karmis, or mental speculators, because such attachment in pure Krishna consciousness is very rare and not possible to achieve even for many liberated persons. As is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, liberation from material contamination is the stage at which devotional service can be achieved. For a person who simply wants to have liberation and to merge into the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, it is not possible to acquire attachment to Krishna. This attachment is very confidentially kept by Krishna and is only bestowed upon pure devotees. Even ordinary devotees cannot have such pure attachment for Krishna. Therefore, how is it possible for success to be achieved by persons whose hearts are contaminated by the actions and reactions of fruitive activities and who are entangled by various types of mental speculation? There are many so-called devotees who artificially think of Krishna's pastimes, which are known as Ashtakaliya Leela. Sometimes one may artificially imitate these, pretending that Krishna is talking with him in the form of a boy, or else one may pretend that Radharani and Krishna both have come to him and are talking with him. Such characteristics are sometimes exhibited by the impersonalist class of men, and they may captivate some innocent persons who have no knowledge in the science of devotional service. However, as soon as an experienced devotee sees all of these caricatures, he can immediately evaluate such rascaldom. If such a pretender is sometimes seen possessing imitative attachment to Krishna, that will not be accepted as real attachment. It may be said, however, that such attachment is like giving a future hope to the pretender, so that he may eventually rise onto the actual platform of pure devotional service. This imitative attachment can be divided into two headings, namely shadow attachment and para, transcendental attachment. If someone, without undergoing the regulative principle of devotional service, or without being guided by a bona fide spiritual master, shows such imitative attachment, it is called shadow attachment. Sometimes it is found that a person actually attached to material enjoyment or salvation has the good fortune to associate with pure devotees while they are engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord. By the good grace of the Lord, one may also cooperate and join in the chanting. At that time, simply by the association of such pure devotees, the moon-like rays from their hearts reflect on him, and by the influence of the pure devotees, he may show some likeness of attachment caused by inquisitiveness, but this is very flickering. And if by the manifestation of such shadow attachment, one feels the disappearance of all material pangs, then it is called para attachment. Such shadow attachment, or para attachment, can develop by associating with a pure devotee, or by visiting holy places like Vrindavan or Mathura. Or, if an ordinary man develops such attachment for Krishna, and fortunately performs devotional activities in the association of pure devotees, he can also rise up to the platform of pure devotional service. The conclusion is that transcendental attachment is so powerful that even if such attachment is seen manifested in some common man, by the association of a pure devotee, it can bring one to the perfectional stage. But such attachment for Krishna cannot be invoked in a person without being sufficiently blessed by the association of pure devotees. As attachment can be invoked by the association of pure devotees, so attachment can also be extinguished by committing offenses at the lotus feet of pure devotees. To be clear, by the association of pure devotees, attachment for Krishna can be aroused. But if one commits offenses at the lotus feet of a devotee, his shadow attachment or para attachment can be extinguished. This extinguishing is like the waning moon, which gradually decreases and at last becomes darkness. One should therefore be very careful while associating with pure devotees to guard against committing an offense at their lotus feet. Transcendental attachment, either shadow or para, can be nullified by different degrees of offenses at the lotus feet of pure devotees. If the offense is very serious, then one's attachment becomes almost nil. And if the offense is not very serious, one's attachment can become second class or third class. If someone becomes attached to the principles of salvation or to merging into the existence of the Brahmajyoti, his ecstasies gradually diminish into shadow and para attachment, or else transform into the principles of Ahangra Upasana. This Ahangra Upasana describes a living entity when he begins spiritual realization by identifying himself with the Supreme Lord. The state of self-realization is technically known as monism. The monist thinks himself one with the Supreme Lord. Thus, without differentiating between himself and the Supreme Lord, it is his view that by worshiping himself, he is worshiping the Supreme Whole. Sometimes it is found that a neophyte is taking part in chanting and dancing very enthusiastically, but within himself he is under the impression that he has become one with the Supreme Whole. This conception of monism is completely different from pure transcendental devotional service. If, however, it is seen that a person has developed a high standard of devotion without having undergone even the regulative principles, it is to be understood that his status of devotional service was achieved in a former life. For some reason or another, it had been temporarily stopped, and most probably by committing an offense at the lotus feet of a devotee. Now, with a good second chance, it has again begun to develop. The conclusion is that steady progress in devotional service can be attained only in the association of pure devotees. If one can gradually advance his status in devotional service, it is to be understood that it is due to the causeless mercy of Krishna himself. If a person is completely detached from material enjoyment and has developed pure ecstatic devotion, even if he is sometimes accidentally found not to be living up to the standard of devotional service, one should not be envious of him. It is confirmed also in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who has unflinching faith in and devotion to the Lord, even if he is sometimes found to be accidentally deviated from pure devotional characteristics, should still be counted amongst the pure. Unflinching faith in devotional service to Lord Krishna and in the spiritual master makes one highly elevated in the activities of devotional service. In the Nishringa Purana it is stated, quote, if a person has completely engaged his mind, body, and activities in the service of the Supreme Godhead, and externally he is found to be engaged in some abominable activities, these abominable activities will surely be very quickly vanquished by the influence of his staunch devotional force. And the example is given that on the full moon there are some spots which may appear to be pockmarks. Still, the illumination spread by the full moon cannot be checked. Similarly, a little fault in the midst of volumes of devotional service is not at all to be counted as fault. Attachment for Krishna is transcendental bliss. Amidst unlimited volumes of transcendental bliss, the spot of some material defect cannot act in any way. I think I'm going to stop there. I forgot to offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada at the beginning again. So let me just do that, since this is such fascinating information he's giving us here. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Our respectful obeisances are unto you, O spiritual master, servant of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, who were kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Dev and delivering the Western countries, which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. I also offer my respectful obeisances unto the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, here, everyone who's listening all around the world. They are just like desire trees and can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. So Bhaktivinoda has something to say here in chat. He says, this is both good and scary. There are more examples and names or categories for people who fail at Krishna consciousness than those who succeed. Well, to say to that, but I think that it's pretty clear here that if our desire and our prayer is for that, then that section on great hope, that was very moving. Because I'm trying my very best to follow the routine principles of devotional service, I am sure that I will go back to Godhead, back to home. And then Rupa Goswami's prayer after that. I mean, Rupa Goswami, he wrote the books, you know, it's like he knows all about this, but still he feels very humble and thinking that he probably won't succeed, but he feels very hopeful. And I found that section to be very moving on page 141. And then there was good too. Yes, he said, Bhaktivinoda says, I said there was good too. And there in that last section that we were just reading, also the mercy of the Lord. A lot of this is we receive as mercy, not because of anything we've done, but just out of his mercy. So he can see that we have a desire, and then he reciprocates. And then things become more clear, and we're able to keep moving forward. And I also want to say that that little section on people who are considered saintly, who, even though they're involved in devotional service, even if they have a slight blight or imperfection, there's something to be said. Srila Prabhupada talks about this in Bhagavad Gita, that if you're accidentally falling down, then that can be excused and you can move forward. But if if you're making intentional mistakes, intentional fall downs, intentionally not following the regulative principles, then that can be a mad elephant offense. And you can, like he was saying here about the moon, that it gets darker and darker, and eventually it's gone. So all these things we have to keep in mind. But I would put Krishna's lotus feet in your heart and make that your goal and constantly think of that. Greece says, well, Krishna consciousness is not easy, I would imagine. Making an honest mistake is forgivable if you didn't know. Yes, exactly. exactly. And Prabhupada says it's easy and it's hard, you know. If we just focus on the easy part, the chanting, I was reading something today about hearing chanting and taking prasadam. That's three things are really important. So yeah, okay. Hearing chanting, taking prasadam. That's the program. Any other comments or questions? No? All right. Oh, here's something. Dr. Mimulus says, thank you. This book gets better and better. I agree. All right. Thank you, my friends. Thank you. Good to see you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.